I'm delighted that Jerome Starkey is back with us. He's defence editor at The Sun. Jerome, great to see you.
Thank you for having me back.
We think now with the submersible that the oxygen has run out. Is there any hope?
Well, I think those who want to be as optimistic as possible might imagine that the 5 passengers have somehow managed to reduce their oxygen consumption over the last 96 hours. But ultimately, that figure of 96 hours emergency air is what we understand the Titan had, and that would have required the passengers to have remained as calm as possible over the preceding days, and we can't guarantee that was even the case.
I saw something about them being huddled together as well, because apparently shivering obviously takes up a lot of energy, takes up a lot of oxygen, because you're breathing in to assist you in doing it as well. I mean, they were sort of slightly dancing on the head of a pin here. I mean, the likelihood is that very sadly these people are dead.
That's absolutely right. I mean, excuse me, I mean, even from the very beginning, the prospects of a successful rescue were slim. Now, as every hour has passed, as every day has passed, those prospects have grown smaller and smaller and smaller till they are almost infinitesimal. And now that the time has run out, certainly some of the people I'm speaking to who are involved in supporting this mission are no longer referring to it as a rescue mission. They're referring it to as a recovery and potentially a salvage operation if they can find the Titan.
I see that the head of the search operation has said it's still an active search and rescue mission, but that's just very optimistic, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's encouraging, yeah. And you know, they are in the position to know best. What's interesting though today is that we understand the US Air Force and the Royal Air Force have been involved in moving a very specialist, ultra-deep British submersible that's been based on the Channel Islands. A US C-17 transport plane has flown in from Ramstein in Germany, is taking it over to St John's in Newfoundland in Canada, which is the closest port to this rescue. And that would suggest that they are planning to continue the operation, because those submersibles won't be able to get into the water for some hours. So we do understand the authorities are planning to carry on searching, and as long as they're searching, I suppose there is a chance, but it is, as we say, very small.
I remember watching a very good documentary about 9/11, and there were photographs of the bunker underneath the White House where Dick Cheney was there. Of course, George W. Bush, who was then president, was in the air, and Air Force One, they're trying to keep him safe in the air. But the Vice President, Dick Cheney, and many people were in an underground bunker, and there was oxygen there, and people started falling asleep because the oxygen levels were low. And then they said, right, we've got to clear these people out, as many people are not essential in the bunker, and preserve the oxygen supplies. Given the level of expertise of the captain and the people in there, what sort of strategies will they have been using to say, actually, we don't know what's happening here, we don't know if we're going to be rescued, if it's going to be as long? I mean, how cognizant, how much will they have known, I suppose, about how much oxygen they will have had? They'll have been aware of it, presumably.
They will have known, they absolutely would have known the emergency reserve, that figure of 96 hours, and these experienced divers absolutely would have known what they might have been able to do to try and reduce their consumption. I mean, ultimately, that's about almost like trying to go into hibernation of sorts, to reduce your heart rate, to reduce your breathing, to, you know, minimize that activity. Of course, that's very difficult when you're panicking and stressed, and you believe that you may be eking out the last days of your life in a small, cold metal tomb, you know, miles underneath the sea. Nonetheless, you know, we have to hope that they have been able to do that. Of course, the other news that's coming through is that suggestions that the noises that were reported as knocking, of course, that raised hopes, suggestions that actually has now been excluded as background noise.
Right.
So we think the rescuers, the analysis, that information was collected by the Canadian military. They used a specialist sub-hunting plane that had dropped a sonar buoy into the water to listen. It had picked up those sounds. They passed those sounds to the American Navy. I understand the suggestion is that they think that was not knocking now.
Right, okay. There's a lot of confusing information around this as well, and it's so difficult, of course, to know in terms of what actually has been happening. But as you say, there is still some hope here. What do you think will happen in the next 24 hours, and at what stage do people say, actually, they are dead?
Well, from a sort of physical, mechanical point of view, the search remains unchanged, because the people who are looking for the Titan have been looking in a vast area in the dark, miles underwater, for something that's relatively very small.
Yeah.
And without regular knocking or sonar pings, they're looking in the dark, and that continues. Ultimately, whether the passengers are alive or not, they're looking for a structure in the dark. And we understand that's going to continue over the next 24 hours. And the reason I say that is because of this decision to move more equipment into the search area, which, you know, that equipment was always going to arrive after the 96 hours of oxygen had expired. So the fact they're doing that, I would expect the search to continue. But you're also absolutely right. I mean, we can't escape the fact that this search is taking place over the site of one of, you know, if not the most famous wreck sites in the world, where more than 1,000 passengers remain in a deep ocean watery grave. I mean, it's a wreck, but it's also a grave, and, you know, the ocean has a habit of swallowing its victims forever. That remains a possibility, of course, for
very, very sad business.